Committee Member Thompson?
Here.
Committee Member DeLong?
Here.
Committee Member Reynolds?
Here.
Committee Member Pittman?
Here.
Chairperson Fowler?
Here.
Advisory Member C?
Here.
And Advisory Member Grover?
Advisory members? Did you get them all?
I called the two that were here.
Okay. Hearings of individuals on non-agenda items. Anybody?
Mr. Chairperson, I have one speaker, Sean Rohrbacher.
Good afternoon, everybody. Was on the agenda update for both the Trails Project and the pool. For the Trails Project, we've hit a bit of a stumbling block. That funding was allocated with a partnership with State Parks crew to be able to build that trail. And in catching up with them towards just over the last month or so, they've lost about half their crew through COVID, and so they're pulling out of being able to build the trail. So putting out the bid's going to be substantially more expensive, but I started reaching out to the county. Was actually really helpful. They were just funded $1 million last year through a fund that Doug LaMalfa's office has access to. So they put me in touch with his office, and I just submitted that grant Monday for $1.5 million, and I should know within a couple of weeks. And I should know if I'm a candidate. They normally have about 30 applicants, and they fund 15. This time they got 37 applicants. So fingers crossed, and we'll see within a couple of weeks. For the pool, we were on track to be done mid-May. With that last rain and some concrete supply problems, it looks more like mid-June. I do have some slides of just to show you what construction's been happening over the last year or so. I'm going to go past the 3 minutes probably, but if you're interested. If you go back to the previous slide, one, just that was the master plan that was submitted with the grant application. You go to the next slide. And then what was put out to bid, the main difference, if you look at that arc of the back fence there, the original master plan had shade structures and picnic tables back there, but to fit within budget, you can see there's just some picnic tables next to the concrete with umbrellas. So, and if you look towards the middle of or just to the left of the big pool, that was the extent of the concrete that was to be replaced as well. So that's where the water play area is, and then leading up towards the grass area just to get all the piping in towards the back of the maintenance shed for the operating equipment. So we ended up adding, you recall from previous updates with the trouble with the concrete around the lip of the pool, and to create more handicap access, we ended up replacing much more of the deck. Let's go to the next slide. So this is just the beginning of removing the coping, was just the main aspect of the big pool before. You can see the little pool there was, that's to be, my 3 minutes? There we go. The small pool is to be demoed and replaced with the water play area. Next slide. So there's an example of the new coping going on and what was going to be ideal at the moment. Okay, they removed the old coping. Here's how the new coping goes on. Next slide. But then when we got towards the back of the pool, you can see that crumbling top layer that I had mentioned in the last couple of updates. And from here, you can even start to see a little bit of the rust in that rebar. Next slide. There's a close-up view of the rusted rebar on top, and you can see towards the back. That's after pulling that top layer of concrete off. Next slide. And you can't see it too well there without zooming in, but when the pool was remodeled in the 70s, to get away from the old side gutter design they had back then, they put in that concrete cap on top. So most of what's rusted is where water got in and got that U-shaped rebar, you can see there, and just blew apart, that's all right, that whole top rectangle of concrete, and then you'll see a lot of that back angled section of concrete as well. So all of that had to end up being replaced. You can see the rust at the back of the wall as well. And then we ended up, this was just at one end of the pool, the north end at first, kind of the shallow end, and then it ended up, we found it throughout just about the entire pool area. So then had to bring in some big saws to cut that deep at the back end of the pool. Next slide. That's just kind of running the normal cutter. And then once that was all removed, they replaced that rectangular kind of cap curb. Next slide. And then you can see here they had to run rebar all around the side and just starting to set form boards to pour that back wall. And that was, again, around just about the entire pool. This was total a little over $100,000 change order. You can kind of see here that the rebar poking out where they had to keep clean ends of, they had to drill in to get to rebar that was not rusted, clean it up, and then pour the concrete. Next slide. Just how they had to go around skimmer boxes, same type of setup. And then meanwhile, at the same time, they're digging the pits for the water play area equipment. And you can see here too, you may recall in the past, I've talked about the soil profile there and the trouble with the hard pan. You can see just about a foot down there is that sandstone type of hard pan where water just does not go through, and it was pretty difficult for them to dig as well. So that's them installing two pieces of the play equipment, the water collecting tank, and you'll see the other one is valve operating system. Concrete pads at the bottom there. And then to the left is actually some of the more of the operating system and the valves. And then this is when they hit the wet weather last fall that set them back a little as well. So there's the big pump, water play area, one side of that box, all the valves and controllers on the other side. Water diverter pump. And next slide is just the collection tank. And they're having to keep water in there now so it doesn't pop up out of the ground. It's kind of crazy. So there, all that is at the back of the utility shed now with the fence posts ready in place. Next slide, and then just with all the lids closed. So, and at the same time, it was kind of a three-prong approach. They had replaced all of the circulation equipment inside the service building. You can just scroll through these next. It's a few shots of just the different, all the piping that had to go in, and I think the next slide is one of the main pumps. New controller for that whole system, new pool heater, and replaced all of that electrical, those connections towards the back as well. Then there they are, replacing that concrete, and then the decorative fence that's going around most of the project, just not towards that little bit of a back portion. All the backfill around where they had repaired the pool edge as well. Again, just finishing that concrete, and at this stage, if you keep scrolling here, they poured about half the concrete. If you may be aware, you just have to set joints, and you can't pour all right next to each other. You're taking your time. So so this is where the water play area is going in, and the shade structure towards the back of that space. So over the next couple of weeks, as they finish pouring these areas of concrete, it's just really setting those posts and the play equipment in place. It's all on site, ready to go. And just as a reminder, these last few slides, is what the shade structure looks like. And the slide, we spent a little bit more money on the slide than we had originally planned, just to make it that much more exciting for the kids. It's 10-foot high slide there. And the water play area, as you saw it before, the middle dump bucket's a little bit different now. It's a spinning bunch of smaller buckets. We did that to save some money at the beginning of the project. But then the rest, it's about 12 different features you can see on the next slide. And then if you just keep scrolling, it'll show those in more detail. It's push button operated, 2 of those posts on either side of the play area. The killer whale theme or the orcas. It's swim team. It's the theme for the play area. Keep scrolling through. Bit of a fountain off the back of the big orca, smaller orca, small, medium, and large type of water spray features, and right down to the next slide for the little tots there. One more. So there's a general update. Again, the plans for the facility as it is now. Does anyone have any questions? There were from the lap pool going to the new pumps. So even though we had the concrete up, that's actually one of the only sections that stayed is the concrete above those pipes. So did. Yes, but it's automatic feed chlorine tabs now compared to having those big barrels on site, which has been difficult, yeah. Cheaper and less space.
Any other questions?
One more question. Are you going to have any remote control automation so your technicians that may take care of it, will they have access, I guess, via cell phone and all that kind of thing?
They will, yep.
That's good, yeah. That's a big popular item for all these parks to have.
Right, especially for the maintenance guys. Huh?
Yeah, cool. Great
All
to
right.
hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, guys.
Mr. Chairperson, that's the only speaker that I had.
I would move that we approve the consent calendar as agenda setting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Oh,
Motion carries with 5 yeses and 0 nos.
We have the budget of 22-23. Steering committee may consider approving the annual SBF expense budget for July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023.
Okay, so what you have in front of you is a 12-month budget. This actually is a projection of what the expenses will be during that 12-month period. I actually, in discussion with Ruth Wright, the finance director, came up with these figures. And as you'll see that the expense cost to the SBF is considerably less than it has been in the past. So it's about 20,000, not about, it should be 20,000 a year in the budget. It would be my educated guess opinion that the actual amount will be less than that because I have nothing going into this newly defined position or contract to determine what actual expenses will be. So, other than the contract with myself. So, any questions on that? It's pretty routine. The SBF does have $99,044.56 of unencumbered funds. There's a considerably larger amount on deposit with the city because funds like the pool, trail, veterans, et cetera, have not fully drawn down yet. There is $135,000 that will come from DWR more than likely in August or September. I talked to Eric briefly about that before the meeting, and we'll just wait for their contract adjustment, and then I'll present that and take it to the city council with Mr. Legrone. But in the interim, we do have funds to operate. Okay?
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question. Just given that the rec district indicated there may be additional costs for the trail. If we did have additional cost request, what could we afford?
Well, at the moment, you can afford 99,000 minus the $20,000 budget, so $79,000. But there is a process if they are going to be outside of the scope of the contract that the SBF approved a couple of years ago, then Sean will come back with a revised ask.
Sure.
And if there's funds, then that becomes the committee's decision to act on it. But to answer your question, there is not a large amount of money that is not committed.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to, being how we got a heads up, I thought I'd get a heads up from this side, so thank you.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? I'll accept a motion.
Move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call to vote?
Motion carries with 5 yeses and 0 nos.
Okay, item number 4, Veterans Memorial Agreement Extension.
Okay, so the Oroville Veterans Memorial Park actually has 2 grants that the SBF has given over the past several years. They had come back on one occasion on the first grant to ask for an extension, which was approved. It was tied to approved because the materials were delayed, and then they were granted a second grant of $35,073 of additional funds to help with that project. Both of those kind of ran into snags with equipment and with COVID-19 issues. And then, of course, there was a third issue, and that was a design issue that the design as originally thought was going to be much more costly than what the county and the committee, the Veterans Committee, apparently wanted to spend. So they have re-looked at that. In the meantime, both of those grants are expiring, and so I bring it to you this evening or this afternoon to consider extending both the grants as they currently are written. PJ Shepard from the committee is here if you have questions, technical questions. You could ask those of her. I've only been back just a few hours, so well, actually a few days, but so I'm still getting up to speed on it. But so what you have before you is a request to extend the grants, and they had asked to extend one of them for just a couple of months, but our history in the past has been to usually go 6 months or a year, or if the project is finished sooner than the grant is fully funded. But we don't extend them for perpetuity, and that's why it's back for an ask from the committee.
Questions? Would you like to make a statement of any kind?
Sure.
Come on up, please.
I'll just give you a real quick project update, which will address some of this. The shade structure was put out to bid. We expect any bids that come in will be in by May 5th. Then we'll know what it's going to really cost. A lot of that cost was shifted towards the per capita fund, the $400,000 per capita that we have. But we still have commitments under the SBF to finish all this, which we intend to do. And there will be an announcement in the park by Congressman LaMalpa at 10 a.m. on May 26th. You might want to be there. And then there's a project that we had ready to go, but because we didn't want any construction or fencing at the time of this announcement, that's going to be pushed out till sometime after Memorial Day, to be determined. And that was to put in the 2 monuments by the flagpole, and there'll be a whole celebration separately for that. So I think we really will need the 6 months. That was good on your part, Bob.
Right.
And I'm sure that the whole thing is going to be done by the end of that. I don't think we're going to need the year, but you never know. So, especially because we have an obligation to put in landscaping next to the trail, and we kind of didn't want to do that until we could coordinate on that, so we don't step on each other's project and cost either one of us more money. So that's,
So you're saying you want to work together?
I have always wanted to work.
Thank you. Nice to hear. Is there any other questions or discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we extend the agreement number 3272 and agreement number 3376 for 6 months.
Second.
Call to vote, please.
For the record, there's no public speakers on this item.
I'm sorry?
For the record, there's no public speakers on this item.
Thank you.
Motion carries with 5 yeses and 0 nos.
Okay, I believe we have SBF DWR. Eric C.
So you have a few slides prepared for the committee? Okay, so just want to start out with an update, operational update.
Sorry.
Yeah, that one right there, thank you. So lake elevation, as of today, was 771 feet elevation. That is probably going to come up a little bit more over the next week to 10 days or so, and then I think we'll be seeing the crest of the lake. As far as Feather River flows, the low flow channel, which is the section through Oroville, is flowing right now at 650 CFS. We have 150 CFS being released from the Afterbay outlet to the river to make a total of 800 CFS down the what we call the high flow channel. 800 CFS is about as low. We're at our absolute minimum that we can release on the river. So we're trying to conserve as much water as we can at the time. The rice farmers have started pulling their deliveries, so now's the point typically where the lake will end up cresting and start to recede. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a chart from the California Data Exchange Center, the CDEC website. This is what they call the 8-station index. These are it's a index of a variety of precipitation monitoring stations up in the upper watershed that forms the watershed for Lake Oroville and several other reservoirs in Northern California. So it's a good indication of where we are here in Northern California. And so the shaded area that says average, that's an average from between 1991 and 2000. And you can see with the blue line where it says current, that's as of about third week of April. We're at 39.2 inches for the watershed. You see average is 53.2, so we're quite a bit below average. I think it's about 83% of average. But I will say that it is better than it was looking. If you look at that line, you see that big jump that happened in April. That was a we're very pleased to see that. You can see prior to that how flat that line is. You can look at the other lines. You can see it's very unusual to be that flat between January and March. So we just experienced the driest January through March period that we have on record. So we were very pleased to see that extra precipitation that occurred in April. And they're out doing the final snow surveys of the season this week. And so there'll be more information probably coming out next week. You'll see it in the news in our press releases. Next slide, please. Okay, and so this is hot off the press. This is, we just actually got this on Monday. This is the updated forecast for the lake. And so this is storage at Lake Oroville. And so you can see there, and these are end of month. When you see where the months indicated on the bottom, that's the end of the month. So we are approaching the end of April, so that's just right about where we are. We're looking, about 775 or so, maybe a little bit more. Then the lake is going to start dropping. And significantly, you can see in the fall where the lake is going to go. Now, last year the lake went down below 640 feet, actually to below 630, which is the first time we'd ever gone that low. So we set a record for low point last year. We were looking a month ago to be potentially on that same track or something very close to that. So you can see from this chart, it's actually changed. It looks like the lake's going to bottom out somewhere in the 675 range or so. Which is significant for us because the lowest boat ramp on Lake Oroville is at 660. So we have to take it out of service at 665. So that means that we'll still have a paved launch ramp throughout the season, which is nice. Last year that lowest boat ramp came out of the water. We had to use a gravel launch ramp that was a bit of a struggle, especially when the lake got really low on keeping that available to the public. So we won't have to do that this year, which is great. So we'll have paved launching. So that's significant. That was a welcome change from the forecast from last month. Next slide, please. Okay, so as far as recreation projects, I've been providing updates for the last couple of years now on the recreation update or recreation projects we've been doing, and these updates are getting to be less and less to update because we're completing the projects that we had started out working on. And so the last one that I had reported on was the Loafer Point boat ramp. And so that's completed that stage 2 boat ramp. So we do have one more portion of that will be constructed when the lake gets low enough. But it looks like this year we're not going to be able to do that. So that's going to be on hold. But it will be completed at some point in the future. In the meantime, though, this is a project that we are just completing, hopefully by the end of this week. We're trying to get this open for this weekend, but we're not sure yet. There's still some a few remaining construction items that we need to get done. But this is what we call the Lakeside Access Road. So what you're seeing is an aerial photo from the spillway side of the dam and spillway area. And so right now, in order to get to the spillway boat ramp, you need to drive through the Highway Patrol kiosks that were installed for security purposes. So this will allow us to not have to use the kiosks, the Highway Patrol kiosks, during portions of the year when the lake is below the 800-foot elevation, which we're going to see this entire season. So the arrows there indicate where the road is. So it's a new road that we constructed on the lake side of the spillway structure, and so it goes from the parking lot that's at the right abutment of the dam down into the lake bed and over to the spillway boat ramp. So this will allow us to go back to 24-hour use of the spillway boat ramp like things were before 2017. So we're pretty excited about this project. It's also going to allow us to be able to have a good access route for construction vehicles and heavy equipment vehicles, things that have a lot of weight to them that we need to be careful about the bridge over the spillway. So it provides us with some additional assistance for future construction projects. So I guess that's all to say about that. That project is about to be open. If it's not this weekend, it should be very soon thereafter.
Eric, before you go on, so what you're saying is the old way is closed down because of the security of the CHP. The new way is going to allow 24-hour access to the boat ramp?
Yes, we'll be able to reopen things like how they were prior to 2017. So people will be able to launch at night and come in at night and be able to access. Because right now, just with the CHP there, they sign off in the evening. I think they're 11 o'clock now. They're signing off, and then they come back in the morning. Which is, if someone has a problem, they get back to the boat ramp late or something like that, they could potentially get locked in. There's, it's not a good situation. So,
Gotcha.
So in this situation, we'll be able to deploy protection measures. Basically those wedge blockers that are around the spillway, but deploy those, and the CHP won't be necessary for security purposes. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that was the final slide. So.
Will that allow people, like right now when you're on the dam at 8 o'clock, for a while there, you couldn't drive on it. So once this is in place, people will actually be able to park out at the far end too and Or is that the far parking lot on the north end of the dam?
You know what, I'm not, as far as the parking lot on the right abutment, I think that's still, there's still gonna be a closure there at night at the, on the right abutment. Now, people can drive all the way out to the boat ramp, but, you know, the parking lot and the abutment, I believe we're gonna keep that closed. But I'm gonna need to check on that. They're, right now, they are finalizing the plan for, and all the signage that's gonna be going across the top of the dam. But that's something we should, definitely need to have figured out, so.
The other question I wanted to ask, and I have friends that have houseboats, at what level would the houseboats be allowed, the ones that are in the parking lot, be allowed to go back on the lake?
You know, I do not have an answer to that. That's something that the Department of Parks and Recreation has been working on with the marina. I think really it's the marina that makes that call, and how they do that, so.
Because I think they already understand that they won't have houseboats back on the lake this year, or this summer, is what I've understood, so.
That's what I've heard as well.
Yeah. So
But
I'm just-
I don't know the specific triggers or what criteria they use.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Okay, moving forward with the agenda items for next meeting.
Okay, just a couple things. One, on the activity report, what I'll be doing starting mid-May is I will be emailing all of you and the advisors a monthly activity report rather than waiting till the next meeting. I think it's kind of important to keep the pulse going on the SBF. 90 days in between meetings, it leaves kind of a large window. So that's number one. The second thing is I think that we may have to have a special meeting before the July meeting because just in my preliminary checking, we do have a couple, and it could be more, I think, well, definitely 3, but it could be more, agreements and contracts that are going to expire or have expired. And so they need to either be brought back to you for a extension or denial of an extension or action of some sort. And I should have that information together next week. My commitment through you folks is 10 hours a month. I'm going to be on site here on Thursdays, 10 to 12, and then I'm doing things from home. I'm waiting right now for Tyson to finish my final hookup. But I'm flexible and willing to, obviously go beyond the 10 hours if need be, and the contract does call for a bill back if that occurs. So, but I believe we'll need to have a meeting within the next couple of weeks. I just want to give you a heads up on that, and I'll have a much better feel of it by next Tuesday.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Welcome.
Good to have you back.
Thank you. My wife is real excited about it, so.
Get you out of the house. Okay, is there anything else from anybody? Hearing and seeing not, let's go ahead and adjourn at 2:36.
Thank you.